So my friend asked me to tell this story because she's already heard a bit of it, and it's very silly. So a few years ago, I was with my boyfriend, and we were looking to score, and we decided to hit up one of his dealers, and instead of going somewhere normal for us and our income level, we ended up in a really ritzy part of Vancouver that was like, you know, way beyond anyone in Vancouver's price range, to be honest. I was amazed I was not immediately quarantined and removed for spreading poverty into the area. It was like, it was rich. You know, white people play polo on purpose there. That kind of rich. And so we pull up to this house that is worth, you know, millions of dollars, and it looks like it. And, you know, I'm amazingly not tased when I start walking across the driveway, and we get up to this beautiful house. We're let in by someone and told that our poor people feet are actually allowed to touch the beautiful hardwood flooring. You know, like, I wouldn't have let me in that house if I owned it. Like, but so we head in and go to the kitchen. And in the kitchen, there is someone who everyone who's lived on the West Coast has met. He's 6'5", very Scandinavian looking white man, you know, very thin, wispy, corn silk blonde hair sticking out from under a grubby headband. You're not really sure if he's just got a ruddy complexion or if he's super tan and burned from spending all his time outside with no sunscreen. Like, that is some prime saddle leather complexion. Like, I would turn him into a pair of moccasins in a second. And, you know, he looks like the missing link between today's Boris Johnson and Tom Felton. You know, no offense, Tom. And he's wearing a lot of linen and a lot of, you know, nasty jewelry, you know, nasty wooden jewelry. Like, everyone on the West Coast knows this guy. And he greets us by bowing and doing, you know, namaste. Which is like, but, you know, he does anyways. And he's introduced to me and he's a very posh English accent, which I wasn't expecting either. And he's introduced to me by a very unique, very twatty rich people name, but I realize it's very identifiable, so I can't say it. And but he prefers to be called Sage because only mommy calls me by my first name. You know, like, okay. And he and my ex know each other from Eton, the school. Yeah, really. What's he doing with me? And Sage is enjoying Mummy's Vancouver home before he heads up to Whistler with all his Aussie surfing buddies. So, you know, we're his last sail of the week. And I am, by this point, feeling very confused. I was expecting to show up at a friend's house and deal. But, so before I can deal with this, you know, juxtaposition of Martha Stewart living versus patchouli, I am pulled into a very patchouli-y, very musky BO hug and kissed very open-mouthedly on the chin, like, you know, very moistly on the chin by this guy. And informed that my boyfriend had understated my beauty, and Sage would love to take pictures of me in the wilderness sometime because he's also an aspiring photographer. We know this guy. But, yeah, so anyways, you know, he takes us up to his room, which is, like, bigger than the apartment block I live in. And, you know, linen shirts and Birkenstocks and those Velcro sandals, you know the ones. They're everywhere. Cultural appropriation is rife on the walls. You know, the only thing he's missing is a Native American headdress, and I'm sure it was in another room somewhere. You know, and I'm going into poverty culture shock because I know rich people like this exist, but I've never met one. I've never been like, oh, this is, you know, here he is. But, yeah, so, you know, and I'm still trying to recover from that chin-higgy kiss situation. And my boyfriend, the whole time, is acting like nothing is weird about this situation. Like, he's just like, yeah, this is Sage, this is fine. And so Sage is going around his room, you know, pulling drugs out of everywhere and tallying it up, and it turns out that we don't have enough cash for what we wanted. So my boyfriend is like, okay, I'll skip back up. I saw a store, I'll hit up the ATM. And I'm left with Sage, alone. Eventually I accept an unopened can of soda, and I sit in a chair in his suite of rooms listening to him ramble on about his photography and his upcoming trip, and eventually he starts to talk to me about my tattoos, piercings, because I have quite a few. And so does he, as it turns out. And you know, it's sort of, I think I'm gonna get out of this fine, and like, okay, he's just, you know, a little weird, and I'm just feeling wrong-footed. But then he says it, oh, I also have my sac and taint pierced. And I'm like, seriously? You know, like, seriously? And, you know, and he's like, I could show you. And I'm kind of thinking he's joking, because, like, who does that? And, you know, I'm sort of like, okay, well, give me X amount of, you know, acid or something, you know, tabs of something for free, and you can show me anything you like, dude. And before I know what's happening, he's dropped twice the requested amount of shit in my lap, and whipped off his linen jumpsuit, as it turns out, like a lady's onesie, and planted one of his dirty, gnarly, hippie feet, like, right beside my head, and grabbed his very, very, very pink dick and balls and just, like, reefed him up against his bizarrely hairless stomach and leaned back in a yoga pose that I still see at night when I'm having nightmares. Like, this is my sleep paralysis demon, is what happened. And, you know, he just reefed his dick and balls up against his body and leaned back, and there's a taint piercing, like the beautiful pink gems, nestled right between his butthole and his wispy, baby-haired ballsack. Like, time froze. I'm just staring at this situation, and I don't know what to do. And, you know, it just, like, I was struck by how wispy and very weird and hairless he was, and the juxtaposition of that really darkly tanned hand versus that really, really raw hot dog pink situation. And then my boyfriend walks in, and the spell is broken, you know, sound has returned, time has moved on, I'm back. And my boyfriend doesn't see anything weird about this. In fact, he walks up to Sage, is like, oh, you actually got the piercing, and, like, grabbed Sage's junk and, like, lifted a leg and checked, and just like, oh, that's so cool, and then proceeds to talk to Sage for another, like, 40 minutes while I'm just sitting there, like, taint frosting my vision, just confused. And of course, at the end we leave, and my boyfriend, you know, I tell my boyfriend about the extra shit that I got and why I had gotten it. And of course, my boyfriend, you know, was very nice about it, you know, gave me a lot of head later that night, let me keep all the tabs for myself. But very nice of him. But and it, you know, upon reflection, now that I'm, like, removed from the situation, I realized that Sage spent the entire time in those Velcro sandals of his, and I'm not okay, like, mentally.